Hey everybody, I am RooseSR, going to be bringing you Ori and the Will of the Wisps. We are doing main quest order, which I will let my commentators explain a little bit once we get started. I've got two very good commentators here with me, Grimelios and Scarfelt. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Grim.
Hey, I'm Scarfall, and I basically run every No Other Bounds category in this game.
All right, let's go ahead and get started, and then we can get into the details. I will get us started. I'll count down from three, starting in three, two, one, go.
Yeah, so we are running a category called Main Quest Order, usually abbreviated MQO. And Scar, what does a main quest mean in this game?
Yeah, so this game basically has a bunch of quests which are either determined as side quests or main quests. And the main quests are essentially the intended order of the game. So this route was basically created as a way of preserving most of the game's actual structure, because you can skip a lot of it with speedrun tech. So it's pretty much just going through the game normally, just with a lot of speedrun tech that we're going to be using to go faster. So
Yeah.
we're going to be doing all the major sequences of the game.
Yeah,
We'll also be staying
this
in
is
balance for what that's worth.
Yeah, this is not really a glitchless category because we will still be doing glitches, but it's kind of in that general direction.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the early part of the game, we're going to be picking up the torch. We won't have it for too long, but it'll be useful for some early game movement.
Yeah, the torch doesn't stay for long, but it gets to do one pretty cool bit of tech, so it earns its place anyway.
Yeah, and so this is kind of like the big change from Ori 1 is Ori 1, there was very, very good platforming, but honestly not very much combat. Like the combat was actually like almost non-existent, and Ori 2 has changed that quite a bit. We're going to get a lot of very cool weapons, and we're going to get to see some actual fighting in this game.
Nice job on that torch hover.
Thank
yeah,
you.
let's say that was torch hover. Basically, you spam off slashes, and for some reason the torch just makes you fly.
Now we get the actual hard jump. Well, I guess the jump probably looks difficult. It is as difficult as it looks, and we have a follow-up jump, which is similarly difficult. Well done by Roos. That jump is significantly more difficult than it looks because the spikes tend to shoot you backwards.
Yeah. What you want to do is interrupt your knockback with the torch swing, basically, and we're going to see that a few other places in the run where we'll be deliberately interrupting our knockback with slashes.
Kind of got it backwards. Like normally I find the first of those two jumps to be the easier one, but that's the one that I have a little trouble with there.
I was going to say, that's one of the things that's different about the different patches of this game as well. That's something we can talk about later, because we're about to come up on one of the first major sequences.
Yeah, what we're coming up to here is this game, unlike Blind Forest, actually has boss fights. You can see that ominous-looking creature in the background. That's known as Howl. We'll be coming up against Howl soon. Roos is going to intentionally take a dip into the water. That was not a mistake, because if you don't get rid of the torch by jumping in water, you end up soft-locking.
Yep. And now
here's Howl.
The loudest thing in existence.
Even scarier up close.
This first part is basically an auto-scroller. You can save like tiny amounts of time, but that's about it. And then the next part, we're going to be doing a very specific set of slashes to hopefully kill him as fast as possible.
Yeah, we got rid of the first torch. Here's the second one. That part's a cutscene. This part is not. Roos just has to get a preset number of hits. You can see that health bar up at the top of the screen. Thankfully, we don't need to kill Howl fully. We just need to get that health bar halfway down, and here we go. So that's Howl out of the way, and then we will be progressing forward towards the first proper skill. Ori 2, just like Ori 1, is a Metroidvania, so throughout the game we'll be collecting a number of objects as well as acquiring permanent new abilities.
And this very first one we're going to be getting is going to be a sword, which is kind of a replacement for that torch, but it's actually not only useful for combat. As a matter of fact, we're not going to use it for combat all that much, but it is really useful because of ways that we can slash the sword to affect our movement. It's actually going to allow us to do some pretty cool little sequence breaks early on in the game here.
Roos skipping that cutscene, moving right along. You get to see the sword in action almost immediately. Like Roos said, it's not going to be the primary damage dealer throughout the entire run, although of course we'll use it to slash in a handful of spots. Here, just a short version of some of the movement we'll be doing. A nice up slash. Just missed it quickly, get a second shot. Allows you to short circuit the movement a little bit rather than running to the right and taking the hanging platforms.
If you miss that jump, that slime can get in the way and actually completely mess you up, and you have to wait for it to move back to the left. But fortunately, I was able to get back into position and take a second attempt at it before it got in the way there, so that's pretty nice.
Hello again. Very typical timing for my internet to completely just crap out, but I'm back. Sorry about
Welcome
that.
back.
Something that we haven't mentioned, but it's probably pretty apparent if you're familiar with a lot of other speedruns. Roos has exited back and forth to the menu a few times. When you see that happen, it's virtually always, maybe literally always, to skip a cutscene.
Yeah. Normally in actual speedruns we do a lot more of that actually, but because this is a marathon and that's not like, super exciting to watch, and it doesn't actually save real time, but game time, what we'll be doing is basically just quitting through the menu for ones that save real time. So that was a 40-second cutscene, for example. So we want to skip that.
Yeah, so we still do a decent number of quit to menus, but not nearly as many as you would see in a leaderboard speedrun of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So here we acquired Double Jump, a very iconic skill common to a lot of platformers. We also picked up our first Shard. If you've played Hollow Knight, Shards are very comparable to the charms in Hollow Knight in that they are items that you can equip and unequip, which give you not kind of entire new abilities, but they give you modifications usually to the abilities that you have, or your health pool, your damage, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we're going to be seeing Sticky used pretty much just for this trick coming up right here in about 30 seconds. This is probably one of the most iconic tricks from Ori Will of the Wisps, and it's gone through a lot of iterations. Unfortunately, this one is a lot more marathon safe than it used to be now that we have a more consistent setup for it. And it's called Door Skip.
Scar, you would know better than I how painful this trick used to be. Not that it's easy now, but
yeah, like it's still not free by any means. But yeah, you used to just had to like kind of hope for the best and just run at it. What we're basically doing is we're picking up this keystone and then not using it on the door, and instead we're going to keep it for later on. So what we're going to be doing is sticking to this wall and then using this guy to basically bounce off him at a very certain time. Okay. Perfectly done.
Well done.
Yeah, so you have to time it so that he jumps in that exact spot by luring him out in a certain way, and then you want to pogo off him at a very precise spot to get your double jump back. Very, very difficult, and getting your first try in a marathon is a huge sigh of relief for Roos there.
Yeah, I literally sighed with relief.
Yeah,
I think we all did.
That's like always one of the oh man, is this run gonna make it past door skip type of moments.
Mm-hmm.
We also just picked up our second shard. We already have Sticky. We just got Reckless. What does Reckless do?
So Reckless we hit immediately, and it makes it so you take more damage, but you also deal more damage. And the reason we've hit it immediately is that we've been killing slimes on the way, and each of them give 5 Spirit Light, which is the currency we've been picking up as we go along. And it's quicker to actually just kill a bunch of slimes to pick up 50 Spirit Light than to pick up the actual, any of the actual big pickups, basically. And Reckless means that we kill these guys in 3 hits rather than 4.
I'm glad you mentioned Spirit Light. That's something that Roos has been going out of his way to collect in pickups in the world, and also intentionally taking out a few enemies to gather some additional Spirit Lights. Because in Ori and the Blind Forest, the first game, Spirit Light is directly used as a currency to level up and empower your abilities. And in this game, it's a currency that you spend at certain shopkeepers. And we're going to be buying just a handful of things as the run progresses.
Yeah, we're going to be buying the most important ability in the whole game that's really cool, and it's coming up in a sec. But first we have to do Offer Skip, which is a really difficult cutscene skip, basically. We're going to be going up and over it, and the reason it's so difficult is the geometry on this tree doesn't actually match up with the visual, so it's the kind of thing you have to spend time learning, and yeah, nicely done.
Thank you.
Nice.
That just skips a cutscene with this guy, and it means we can buy Sentry, which is going to do this.
Whee!
And up we go. Casually, Sentry is a damage dealing ability. It places a little wisp in the air that is kind of like a turret and deals damage for a little while, but it turns out that you can use it to do something that is called a Sentry Jump. You can do it from the ground or in the air, although the aerial version is quite a bit more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the grounded version, take one.
I mean, obviously, being able to launch yourself up that high is going to result in some pretty cool sequence breaks. It can result in like really breaking the game in some ways that are against the rules of this category, but we're still going to be using it just constantly, and it's basically just going to be to like speed up areas rather than bypass entire ones, thanks to the rules of the category.
Yeah, so you saw there we used it to climb up this wall like instantly rather than like physically jumping up it over and over again, that kind of thing.
Yeah, one important aspect, if you look down at the bottom center of the screen, you'll see green for health, but also blue for energy. Doing Sentry Jumps isn't free, so sometimes, even though we have this speedrunner trick to gain height, Roos won't be doing it constantly.
Yeah, so you saw there, for example, Roos did a few slashes to get up there rather than doing a Sentry Jump, and the Sentries, basically, it means that we've had to route out when we want to do our sentry jumps at exact points, and that's one of the things that I think is most interesting about this run, honestly, and one of the more fun aspects, knowing when to sentry jump and when not to.
Yeah, we also just picked up the bow, which in this game is called the Spirit Arc. We're going to be using it here for some puzzle purposes. You have to shoot these eyes. This is kind of the game's way of teaching you how to use the bow. But the bow, especially in combination with some shards we'll be picking up in a little while, will be the primary damage source for the entire game.
Yeah, something we're going to see pretty commonly throughout the run is this idea of like the rich get richer, in that the bow and the sentry are not only like, you know, very good damage dealers and in terms of the bow, and very good for mobility for the sentry, but they also do a bunch of other stuff, which means that we can basically bypass a lot of the game with just these two abilities. So look forward to that later on.
Yeah, like we're actually pretty close to having collected basically everything we need for the run. Like we'll get a couple more
Yeah.
important movement skills, but in terms of like combat, we're nearly done.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting point for those who haven't played this game casually. I remember being impressed, well, when I played it casually, at the structure of this game, where you spend the early part of the game just kind of gathering up not every ability in the game, but a number of the abilities, especially your core movement, stuff like dashing and double jump, some of your basic weapons. And then it's the really second half or maybe 2/3 of the game that you spend using those abilities to traverse the world and gather the primary collectible.
Yeah, I for one was like very grateful that they gave us
Yeah, it means that most of the game you're going to be spending with your bash, your dash, so on and so forth, which is just, you know, it really helps for the casual play group. Also, as in a speedrun, it means that most of the game we have our core abilities.
Yeah, here in Qualock's Hollow, by the way, you can see this purple water, purple, as in many games, meaning that it is danger. If you touch the poison water, you will get hurt. Roos will actually be lowering this water, and Scar, it's possible to not lower the water, right?
Yeah, so it's possible to swim through the water and hit save triggers that are still loaded inside the dirty water, while doing a very specific setup, but it's very, very difficult and saves about 5 seconds. So Roos is elected to not go for it, which is totally fair. It's like, it's really hard. Oh,
I
wow.
got a little corner boost there. That was cool.
Yeah, so if you hit certain corners in certain ways,
Yo,
you're like,
let's
you
go!
go!
Oh my goodness.
I wasn't ready for that one. I went too far.
Okay.
That was fantastic.
That is incredibly rare to get even one.
That was a powerful one.
Yeah, I've never gotten corner boosted that hard before. That was excellent.
Yeah. Now we're coming up on. So like, that's so I've never seen that happen back to back like ever. Yeah, now we're coming
boy.
up on.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Stay away. Okay, we're gonna take this the slow and easy way around here. Things
Yeah,
got
so it's
real hairy
RNG.
there.
It's RNG whether that beetle is a bother or not, basically. And Roos got like the worst possible RNG I can imagine.
So now we get a very cool skill. It's called Dash, although in this game it's more of a quick roll.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to see it immediately. We're going to use it just to head over here to the right and die. We're going to head it over to the right and pick up a spirit light
Oh my
container.
goodness! Come on now. There we go.
Yeah, and this is 200 now. We're picking up spirit light for. We're going to be going to like basically a main central hub of the game.
Whoop, did we lose Scarfelt there? So as Scar was saying, we're going to be going to like a central hub town area where we're going to be doing some purchases with the spirit light that we're collecting right now, and that is essentially all of the purchasing we'll be doing. There's one final one a few minutes after that, but what we're collecting right now is just to get a shard that's going to allow us to get a lot more efficient use out of our energy, which we'll point out as it comes up. But right now, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're coming up on the coolest speed tech. We forgot to even mention it. About to see it now. Called Wave Dash. Check it out. Zoom.
I love that. It's so flashy
Yeah.
and so fast.
We didn't mention it at the time because it's honestly very forgettable for the speedrun anyway. We got an ability called Regenerate, which lets you stand completely still and heal up, which sounds useless, but if you dash into a wall and regenerate while holding the other direction, for some reason all of your initial dash momentum is preserved and you just go flying in the other direction. So that's called a wave dash, and the reason for that is that while we were discussing what to call it, one of the developers, Onin, came in and was like, you should call it wave dashing because it looks like Ori is waving at the camera.
which is a
And here
fantastic...
I thought it was a reference to Smash.
I thought it was too
Yeah.
this entire time.
Yeah, I think everyone assumed it was a thing, like reference to Smash, right?
So, as we discussed, the early part of Will of the Wisps has Ori gathering up a number of Oris that you could consider basic movement abilities. We don't have all of them yet, but we will get them soon. Here, actually, Roos is going to use a Sentry Jump and a very nice wave dash to gain a lot of distance, and we actually just skipped a boss fight, believe it or not. It's called the Horn Bug, and we will be seeing it again later.
Yeah. But for now, we're going to be getting Bash, which is, I guess, the most iconic ability of Ori. Basically what it allows you to do is freeze yourself in place on objects or projectiles, and then launch off them. And also what Roos is doing here is whenever you pick up Spirit Light, you get like a little cutscene going, yeah, you pick up Spirit Light. And what Roos is doing here is avoiding touching the ground until he reaches this lever, and that will skip that 1.5 second cutscene. So he only... Sorry, go on.
You say avoiding touching the ground. It's interesting. You can actually touch the ground, but for just like a moment, right?
Yeah, like
it's kind of odd.
You touched it for tiny, tiny moments. Also, if you dash into ground like that, then it goes even quicker, basically, because you'll be like... It works even better, because dash doesn't count as you touching the ground, if that makes sense.
I guess we can touch on... Well, I guess first we'll mention you see this giant creepy spider in the background. This is the entrance to an area called Moldwood Deaths, but we're not going to be going inside there yet. The reason we're coming over here is to pick up an additional shard to empower the bow. This one's called Splinter.
Yeah, so we're not going to see the bow in action for a while, but basically the shards we've picked up are Splinter and Quick Shot. Splinter makes the bow split into multiples, and Quick Shot, as you'd imagine, makes you shoot quicker. And the combination of those, we're going to basically be melting the bosses and enemies throughout the run. Also, worth mentioning... Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, this is the portion of the run where we really get to see Roos start to chain these abilities together. Dashing where possible, in many cases doing bash gliding, which is actually tech from Ori 1. Wave dashing, all while trying to utilize that energy as efficiently as possible.
Mm-hmm. And we're using it to basically pick up Spirit Light while head on the way that we're meant to be going. And whenever like all the movement in this game chains together, it really feels fantastic. It's also something very small there, where after a dash, you can slash to interrupt the cooldown of the dash, and then do that again. So you're basically chaining dashes and slashes together. And say hi to Frog Champ.
OS Frog.
Very, very large Frog Champ.
Yeah.
That character's named Quolok, of Quolok's Hollow fame. That's one of the primary objectives. You have to go talk to Quolok, and then when you come back here, the Mokis will pull this background lever and allow you to go to a new area.
As the game is called Will of the Wisps, the idea is you have to collect the 5 wisps, and he actually gave us our first one. So if you look down at the bottom, we actually have 1 more energy and health than before. Every time you pick up a wisp, you get permanent health and energy increase, which is really helpful for us because we're not going to be getting too many upgrades.
Yeah, we've actually collected all of the cells that we're going to need to grab at this point that are increasing the amount of health and energy we have. We're just going to rely on the wisps from this point to get us the rest of what we need.
Roos actually just did a brief cutscene skip as well. Normally there's an introductory sequence to this area.
Yeah, where this guy, Grom on the left, says hi to you, but we're just going to boost on past him because we're rude, and then talk to Twillin, who sells us shirts.
Recall that we've been collecting Spirit Light so far. We already bought Sentry earlier, and we just picked up 2 additional upgrades.
Yeah, so what we just got there was Overcharge, and that means that Roos is going to take double damage from everything, but all of his energy costs are going to be halved. So if you look at the bottom now, Sentry Jumps only cost half an energy cell, which is, doubles how much we can use it. But also, pretty much everything in this game does 4 damage, like spikes, which means that Roos is going to take 2 hits before he just dies. So
I wanna draw attention. We mentioned this earlier, but it's worth reiterating. These Sentry Jumps we've been doing from the ground, they're pretty easy. From the air, it's frame perfect, but not probably in the way that you'd think. You have to press one button and then another button. What is it? 3 frames later?
Yeah,
exactly 3 frames apart. Yeah.
Exactly 3 frames later.
And this is a 60 FPS game, so that's a 1/60th of a second timing to get them to work correctly.
Yeah. And which means that for the most part, we're going to try and avoid doing them. Roos did one a little bit earlier there for, just sake of saving a bit of time, because it's a lot quicker to go for it than getting the grounded one. And there's a mandatory one coming up in a little bit here as well.
Yeah, so this area we're in now is called the Wellspring. You can think of it as the first dungeon, even though you spend quite a bit of it outside. And Roos actually did some clever movement in order to catch a cycle to exit out of that area and enter the Wellspring proper. We do have, unfortunately, an unskippable cutscene.
Yeah, this is, I think, the first time in the whole run you really get to, lean back and breathe,
And actually, during this cutscene, I'm going to toss over, I believe we have a donation ready.
We do. We have $10 from Richard with his name spelled backwards. He says, "Good luck, Roos." Heart.
Thank you, Richard.
Richard is fantastic.
The fact that you recognized that it was Richard spelled backwards that quickly is better than I did the first time it came into my chat.
I got a little worried when I read it for the first time.
So Roos made that look easy, but that was another example of that one-frame aerial sentry jump. If you mess it up, you don't... the consequences aren't too severe, but you burn a little bit of energy, and if you run out of energy, then you lose your ability to do the trick.
3 times. You can only have 3 sentries out at a time, which means that if you mess up the trick, multiple times in a row, you will just fall. So pretty scary stuff.
So what is this fancy new ability?
Yeah, we just got Grapple. And basically, if there's any of this blue objects around, so the moss or these hanging bulbs, you press the Grapple button and Ori will just fling themselves onto it. And it gives you your dash back, gives you your jump back, all that kind of stuff. So it allows us to chain our movement even better than we were before, basically.
The main objective here in the Wellspring is just to go up. We'll be doing that partially inside and partially outside, and this is where Sentry Jumps can come in handy to avoid doing many portions of this dungeon.
Yeah, worth mentioning that we actually, like a lot of Metroidvanias, this game has, shortcuts that get opened at the end of sections, one-way shortcuts or whatever. And we basically just did that section. We did the shortcut backwards, which we just skipped the whole first section to unlocking a shortcut we weren't meant to.
Yeah, I think this is our first real example of bow combat.
Oh yeah, you can see that basically enemies just explode in the face of Splinter.
Wow,
And
no energy drops there. That was unfortunate.
Yeah, that is really unlucky.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, yeah, I was going to say, just like our Sentry Jumps aren't free, bow shooting isn't free either. It's not too expensive in terms of energy cost, but it's not free.
Yeah. We're also going to be coming up on, honestly, one of my favorite rooms in the whole run. This room is really, really fun. In the casual playthrough, you're meant to do a lot of laser avoiding by and rotate this room multiple times. But in this room, what we're going to do is basically just send you up here, and then we're going to get a pile of lasers in a row and try and hit the best
Oh,
possible
I didn't
cycle.
quite make the
That
cycle.
was so close. I was so sure you were going to get it.
Yeah, Roos has been just barely dodging around these corners. Generally speaking, when you're looking at either of the Ori games, the collision geometry on the map is usually, not always, but usually very accurate to what you see. So if it looks like Roos is just barely squeezing around a corner or dodging a spike, that's probably accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that's interesting about Ori is that there's no even ground in the whole game, and there's no even walls in the whole game. Everything is, slightly naturalistic, I guess. Which makes it... Yeah. So it makes it so your movement, you have to really know the game and the shape of the land to be able to keep your movement out. That was so good.
Your Sentry Jumps are on fire,
My
but
air jumps have been really, really good so far. No question.
Yeah.
We have something very exciting coming up here. This was a donation incentive, I believe, in just a moment. This is
quickly, and then we're into it.
This is an escape sequence, the water escape sequence. By the time we're done, the water will be clean. Most players would use their eyes to do this, but Roos is better than most players. So what Roos is doing here, blindfolding himself, Roos will also be muting myself and Scar's audio because, like any blindfolded sequence, audio cues become very, very important. Also going ahead and muting the music temporarily. So Scar, in just a moment, I think I'll toss to you if you want to kick us off.
All right,
sure thing.
Muting you folks just a second here.
Good luck.
Best of luck. Okay, he's getting started. So basically what he's doing is he's normalizing his movement. And what that means is he's doing things that will have the exact same result every time. Which is why he's doing this exact amount of slashes and that exact amount of dashes. And here, because stuff like because he can get onto this wall and just hold up, he can hear whenever Ori gets onto the top of that little pillar there, basically, and knows to dash to the right. And you can also hear Ori's footsteps on the wooden platform there compared to other sounds, because each different surface sounds different. And again, here you could hear the second crash and know to jump over these spikes. There's a lot of sections of this which look like how could he possibly be doing this. The reason is pretty much just a very clever setup. So here he knows that whenever he dashes and he grapples here, he knows exactly where he's going to be. And the same thing with this grapple to the right. And now he's going to go up to this wall and turn around so he doesn't stick to it and do a sentry jump over the top of it. And then here, there's going to be a bunch of grapples in a row. And he's going to basically just chain his grapples and know where they're going to be because it's the same muscle memory from normal gameplay. And here, there's a pile of things to bash off. And he's basically just going to run onto them and just mash the bash button and hopefully get onto each one as he does. Oh, and
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
I can't believe it.
I can't
That was
believe
so
that.
close.
That was amazing.
The water in that sequence does rubber band a little bit, but when it gets close, Ori starts taking tick damage. That was very, very tight.
All right, and I'm back. Okay, the
Yeah,
end part of that was really, really scary. I didn't get the grapple that I normally get there. Which I normally use to get myself into that last little corridor there. But once I realized it hadn't gone off, I was like, okay, just wall jump up the side. I should be able to make it.
Yeah, that was so scary.
How close was the water?
Like, it was, you were inside the water. I was so sure you
Okay,
were dead.
I took a hit and I figured that was the water like catching up to me. I was like, oh no, I'm right at the end here.
Yeah.
You just wanted a nice bath, clearly.
Exactly. Whatever, we got through it first try. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good job.
That's very, very impressive.
Yeah, I can't be
with-
stressed enough how difficult that is.
Roos put a lot of practice into that. So well done. With the Wellspring cleared, the water has changed from purple to kind of clearish blue, which means that it's clean, which is important because now we're going to go for a swim. The swim during the escape was unintentional. This one is intentional.
Yeah. So,
You can see that oxygen meter above Ori, by the way.
Yeah, swimming in Ori is pretty basic until a bit later when we're going to be getting an ability for it. This is an intentional death because Roos did a sentry jump in the escape. It means he has less energy than he would want to have. So he's taking an intentional death here because there's a upcoming trick that needs to be done basically first time, or you're going to be losing a lot of time. And we need to have all the energy we can get for it. It's basically just like an aerial sentry jump, but if you don't get it first time, basically, then you have to spawn all the way back here.
Yeah, and there's basically no outs to messing it up. I didn't quite get the first try one out of the wave dash, unfortunately.
A sequence break. Yep, nice job. Getting into the early part of Luma pools early, and remember that main quest order means that you have to perform the main quests in order, or more accurately, you can't do any quests out of order. So Roos is still dipping into an area early, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be completing the quests early.
Yeah, exactly. The only quest in Luma pools is actually beating the boss here. So what we're going to do is just dip in, get the ability, get the save point before the boss, and then just leave. And because Luma pools is so close to Wellspring, it's actually a lot quicker to do this now, so we have swim dash for the rest of the run.
And this is a beautiful area.
This is my favorite skip in the whole game. It's so weird.
That was intentional.
Yeah. So if you die into those spikes, for some reason, it automatically completes this puzzle, which lowers the water.
Yeah, normally you'll see the stuff I'm swimming around. There's these little like anemones that you're supposed to swim into, and you go around this whole thing in this circle. But for some reason, dying in those spikes just solves the puzzle. That's all you got to do.
Yep. And another upcoming very weird thing. For some reason, if you quit to menu there, this door for this combat room just never loads.
Yeah, there's actually a pretty extended like fight sequence that I'm supposed to do there, but because I quit to menu after doing that puzzle, it unloads that door and I can just swim through it. As long as you don't go up on that platform there, the enemies never spawn.
Honestly, something that's impressive to me about this section is the oxygen kind of gets pretty low at times.
Yeah, we have to actually be pretty careful with it. At that point in particular, we have to go back and dive up to get some water. Oh, you made it, nice.
It was enough. It was enough. We mentioned that these aerial sentry jumps are one-frame tricks, and they are but they're one frame to get optimal height. You can usually still get a little bit of height if you don't do them perfectly.
If you're off by
Yeah.
1 frame, you can get just a tiny little boost. It's not enough to do most of the sequence breaks, but for like something like that, you can just barely make it up there.
Mm-hmm.
And with this, we're coming up to another ability called Water Dash. We already have the regular dash. This one lets you dash in water.
And whenever you dash out of the water, you'll see where you'll get a huge boost like this. And what you may notice as well is we didn't actually pick up 4 keystones for the store, but the keystone we saved all the way back from door skip was saved for this, and now we can get the intended keystone a lot quicker using Water Dash.
Yeah, kind of just keep that in mind. That will not be the last keystone door we open, and the fact that good snipe there.
Wow, I've never seen that before.
That was fantastic. Get that slime on
Anyway, we'll be using keystones. So one thing that's kind of neat about Willow of the Wisps, you can see Ori teleporting in midair here. This is basically called teleport from anywhere. I'm sorry, not the Wellspring. The Spirit Well is off to the left. You don't actually have to touch it to get it unlocked. You just have to get close.
Yeah. And here, this boss that we skipped earlier, Hornbug, we're going to go fight him now. Now that we're all decked out with our super OP bow, we're just going to now fight him, basically. And because he's an early game boss, he will melt. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say one thing that's interesting. The category is called, well, actually, it's kind of like a variant of all challenges. So you do have to complete main quest order, like we said, but this boss is considered a challenge by the category rules.
Yeah, so we still have to do this. This boss actually doesn't apply any quest at all. In fact, in 100%, you don't even kill him. He doesn't do any percentage. Just you can't skip him in regular gameplay, so I guess they never thought to like enforce it, right?
Yeah, I guess so. And there it goes. Again, normally you would defeat this boss quite a bit earlier.
Yeah. And fortunately for us, he also drops a bunch of energy and health, which we're now going to use to go on to the next intended area, Silent Woods.
Yeah, Silent Woods is actually where you were. Sorry, go ahead, Riss.
That boss, I think, has gone through the most variations of when we fight it in the run, based on like what route we were using, because we actually do pass through that area a 3rd time later, and we used to delay doing it until then because we would like do a 2nd shopping trip and get a lot more damage in our build, and we would just kill it even faster. But it turns out it's faster to like cut out the 2nd shopping trip entirely and just do a slightly lower DPS build and fight him this way.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. One of the interesting things about a category like this, which has kind of vague and broad rules, means we've went through a lot of different routes of well, which wisp should we get first? What ability should we get? What shard should we get? Which spirit light should we pick up? Even spirit light pickups have been changed a lot throughout the run's history. Actually, oh, that's a shame. We just went for a cutscene skip there, but failing it means Ori stands in the middle of the air for the cutscene, which is pretty funny too. So
it only loses a few seconds, and you get to see Ori do this, so it's pretty okay.
Yeah, we're coming into the Silent Woods, as we said. You're actually supposed to do this directly after the Wellspring because you had to clean the water to get here. Roos did make a pit stop over in Luma Pools, as we mentioned, really utilizing the power of that wave dash to get over here. This area is also pretty cycle-based. There are these bubbles in the water that you can use to...
Oh my god.
You can use to avoid this happening.
I think I just tried to upslash a little bit too fast, and I couldn't quite do it yet.
Yeah.
That's how that's supposed to
be. Yeah. So, it went well for you anyway. Pretty much that's the only bubble we're actually trying to hit there. We can avoid the rest of them, but if your movement's perfect, that bubble will like spawn like pretty much the frame you arrive.
Yeah, maintaining that trend of keeping an extra keystone in the back pocket for later.
Yeah. And here, for some reason, you can refresh your dash on the ceiling by just sentry jumping over this cutscene. And now we get into the first like proper long cutscene of the game.
Yeah, we haven't really touched on lore, which is very common for speedruns. I found this game very emotionally impactful. I'm sure it won't have the same effect here because you don't know the context. But take my word for it.
On that note, I highly recommend anybody who has not played this definitely check out both Ori games. They are wonderful. They're not that long to get through, no, not that expensive, but like they're beautiful, beautiful games.
Yeah, like they're both some of my favorite ever games made, and everyone I know that's played them has said the same thing. They're just phenomenal.
Big, scary. I guess it's an owl.
Yeah, it's an
owl-ish. That's Shriek, the game's main antagonist, who we will be seeing again very soon.
And our little owl buddy here, this is Ku, who we've been trying to rescue this whole time. You wouldn't know that because we've skipped all our cutscenes, but our goal was to find Ku, and now that we've found Ku, we're trying to get back home, but we're going to have to find all of the Wisps to actually do that.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth bringing up the difference in route between patches at this point?
Sure, go ahead and give a quick overview, because this is like the most relevant part of that.
Yeah, so basically, depending on which patch you're playing on, it's possible to do funky things with Ku, basically. And while this isn't happening in this run, the reason I bring it up is that, like, 2 days ago, I found something that would have changed the entire route. And Roos was both excited and also, like, I assume, like, oh no, that he was going to have to relearn the whole route the day before the marathon. But fortunately, or unfortunately, it didn't really pan out, so you now have to ride Ku the whole time.
Yeah, Ku's, or I should say Ori while riding Ku's moveset is significantly limited compared to a regular Ori. You spend a comparatively very low percentage of the entire playthrough on Ku, but I think it's a fun mechanic while you get
It's a
to
pretty
do it.
cool little section.
Oh my god. I hope you miss one of these bubbles and fall in the ooze.
Well, I'm gonna go for the swag strat. You know what? I deserve that for the pun.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, also
for it
we're
again.
mentioning. Oh,
Nice.
yes, you got it. That's it. So that swag strat saves precisely no time. However, it looks really cool, so...
Normally, you're just supposed to hit that bubble and go up and over the top, but you can just barely make it under there. You have to time your jump, like, really well, because you'll bonk if you go too early, and you'll hit the acid, like, slime, tar stuff if you go too low. All right.
I think while we finished up... Well, actually, go ahead, Roos.
There is another cutscene skip possible here, but it requires almost flawless movement. I don't think I've ever actually gotten it in a run, so I probably shouldn't have even mentioned it until I see if I get it or not.
Yeah, then you can just, like, go, oh, I get this every time.
Yep,
You know?
Nobody
Yes.
knows you made a mistake if you don't tell them.
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going up here.
Yeah, this might not look like much, but you have to move very optimally.
Oh, I bonked. Nope, that's not going to work.
Yeah, basically, while Shriek is in the other little point of, like, trying to find you, if you get past this whole section before she finishes that, then that part of her bursting her head through won't happen, basically. But it's really difficult to go that fast.
Yeah, it's so
No,
difficult that Scarfelt here, like, accidentally did it once, and then me and them both spent, like, literally hours trying to recreate it to see if we could figure out what caused it, and we're unsuccessful for quite a while.
Yeah. It's, like, only a recent thing that it started being, like, implemented in the runs now that we have, like, more consistent ways of doing it. Yeah, we're
Yeah, so
now
during that, we
Go on.
skipped a cutscene, so you don't get to see the juicy story, but TLDR, our objective will soon change. We're trying to gather up these wisps, and the reason that we're gathering these wisps is going to be to help. Revive is the wrong word, because Ku isn't,
dead.
isn't totally gone, but let's just
Yeah.
say heal
Ku's
Yeah, sure.
severely injured.
severely.
We
got
got
stomped
ambushed.
by a...
Got ambushed by Shriek, and Ku tried to defend us and is not doing so hot right now.
I actually read in the art book, originally they were planning to have Ku die here. Like, just straight
I
up
thought
dead.
Ku died. When
I
saw
did
him.
too in my first playthrough. I didn't notice that, like, she's still breathing just a little bit.
Yeah, they apparently changed it because playtesters, like, hated them.
Really?
Yeah, which is pretty
That's
funny.
I want to toss to donations if this is a good time, which I think it is.
All right. We have $5 from Covert Muffin, who says, "Good luck, have fun with the run, Roos. May the mid-air sentries be kind and ever so soggy." And then, in addition, we have $10 from Glint, who says, "Did my own little speed walk of this game over the past week to make sure I could catch Roos's run. Best of luck to both the runner and commentator's heart."
I want to give
Thank
a
you.
shout out to the Ori community. Like, you will never find a friendlier group of people in the entire world. They're all phenomenal, and all these donators so far have been Ori community members coming out to show their love.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I'll second that.
It's true. Like I only joined in the last year or so when Wisps came out, and I've had nothing but wonderful experience with it. It's a really, really kind community with and if you want to speedrun the games, there's loads of resources and people are really willing to help out as well. So
Yeah, so to get back to the run a little bit, once you clear the section that Roos got through a little bit ago in Silent Woods, the game opens up a little bit where you have multiple paths that you can choose to take, mostly in whatever order you want. Here we're going to an area called Bower's Reach, which is kind of a callback to Forlorn Ruins from the first game. As you can see, everything's frozen, and what you're meant to do is light up a series of torches in order to melt the ice and progress through the area. We'll still be doing that, but in some unintended ways.
yeah, so I mentioned way earlier that Sentry has a thing of the rich getting richer, and what that means is that if you drop a Sentry here, whenever it expires, it'll leave a... Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, basically whenever like the Sentry like disappears, it has like a fire effect, which normally the ability of this area is meant to have to break this ice wall. But because Sentry does it too, it means that this ice wall will just break, and we do not need to get the ability of this area, so we can skip the large majority of it.
It's so fascinating to me that a Sentry like the little Wisp bursting has this effect, and I just have to wonder whether that was like a bug or an intentional feature. I mean, either way, it's really cool.
Yeah,
it's just so surprising that it works.
I assume it's one of those things that they kind of like, they probably put in and didn't think that anyone would really use it for this kind of purpose, right? Because it allows you to do things like break the shields of these guys as well, but we don't really need to do that. So doing that takes forever, so we're just gonna kill them normally by just bashing through them and using the bow.
Yeah, fighting these enemies does have a little bit of nuance to them. Not the little beetle, but the big shield enemies, because you have to wait just a moment until they've kind of locked onto your direction, and then you can get over to the other side and deal a lot of backstab damage.
Yeah, so we want to wait for him to stop screaming, basically, and then go for him. Yeah, exactly like that. Like Grim said.
Nice.
Last one here.
They're all bark and no bite.
Oh,
That's a lie. They're dangerous.
So earlier we actually used up our keystone from way ages ago with door skip. We used it up and didn't get the another one to replace it in Silent Woods because it takes forever to get that one. So here we have another replacement keystone we've gathered, which is just this one in Bower's Reach, and we're going to be using this one a few times throughout the run.
Wow, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate death because it spawns you so far down.
The nice part is that with Feather, we didn't really talk about how we got Feather either. It's something that's an ability from the first game that, in the context of this speedrun, we effectively got it during a cutscene, right?
Yeah. And basically it's a glide, and on these little like air vents, I guess, you can use them to glide up, which you're going to be seeing here again in a sec.
That was really close to launching into that fireball there. That would have been a little unfortunate.
Yeah. And coming up here is actually a really big cutscene skip. This one's over a minute long. And what we're just going to do is do a sentry and then wait a little bit and do an aerial sentry. Okay, didn't quite get it that time. Okay, nice.
Just
Nice
throwing
job.
for content. Throwing for content.
Now that's a lot harder than it looks, because if you go too high, you actually hit like an out of bounds plane and you zone out, which makes you respawn and have to try the...
We actually got another Wisp. Remember, we need to get 5 of them total. Roos just going to blaze right through this escape sequence as fast as possible. We're also going to be able to use that water dash that we got over in the Luma pools to speed this up just a hair.
Yeah, right at the very end of this, we get to water dash in and out. Like that.
It's not much, but it's something.
Yeah. And that is the escape done.
It was really
Also-
important to not die in there because you do not get an autosave at the start of the escape like you normally would, and so you have to like if you die you have to redo the cutscene skip at the very beginning of all of that.
It's kind of cool. Roos mentioned way at the start of this run that this game has a lot of combat in Ori and the Blind Forest. The first game doesn't. What Ori and the Blind Forest has is escape sequences which kind of act as pseudo-boss fights, and this game has some interesting combinations of that too. For example, here we teleported back to the Luma pools. We're going to go see Quolok, and uh-oh, something's wrong with Quolok. This will become a boss fight, but there's actually going to be an escape sequence just before it, so this game has some interesting combinations of escaping and fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So this boss and the one that we'll be doing after this can be flip-flopped pretty easily. It's kind of up to runner preference. Basically, because you get a wisp from either one, you're choosing which one do you want to have extra health and energy for. And honestly, I've gone back and forth on which one I think should be done first, but I just kind of prefer doing this one before the other one, just to get an extra hit on the later boss.
Yeah, a lot of people consider the upper boss to be the hardest one in the game, like casually as well, but in a speedrun environment too. But I mean, in a speedrun environment, every boss can be difficult. You know, if they give you bad patterns or stuff starts going wrong, it'd be very easy to just have everything spiral out of control. This first escape sequence, Quillock doesn't overband, so basically we're just going to be like heading on normally, and just waiting for him at the end of the arena. So I assume Roos is going to take a heal here too.
Yeah, the rare usage of regenerate for its actual purpose.
Yeah. I have to wait for him to stop screaming, and once he does that, he will be vulnerable, and we will just wail on him with the bow. We'll drop a few sentries for its actual intended purpose of damage. Here you can bash the projectile back at Quillock, which will cause him to be stunned for a little bit. And this attack basically...
I was just going to say there's a lot of screen shake in this fight. It's a cool fight, a lot of screen shake.
Yeah, the screen shake actually got patched into the game, which is a pretty curious decision, but...
Yeah, anyway, halfway through this fight, the water spawns, which is where Roos wanted to get as much damage as possible before that happened, and Roos was able to successfully get past the halfway point. You can see at the top just a little bit more, but your maneuverability is severely compromised during this section.
Yeah, and Quillock's attacks will linger in the water as well, but yeah, great job there.
A little slow on the second phase there. I ran out of energy at an unfortunate time and took some damage. I was playing it a little safe. That second phase can definitely be done faster than that, but not dying is the prime directive there.
Yeah, most of the bosses in this game have like a checkpoint in the middle of the boss fight. Quillock does not, so if you die at Quillock, it is right back to the very start of the fight. You don't have to do the escape again, but still have to do the fight.
Fun trivia, that is the same tentacle monster that Roos ran away from while blind.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Maybe Roos shouldn't be allowed to run anymore.
Probably not.
This gets us another Wisp, one closer to that target of all 5. I believe this is number 3.
Correct.
And we need to gather 4 of them before the Wind-Torn Ruins, which is the penultimate dungeon, will unlock.
I think almost everyone I know casually got to the door of the final dungeon and got hit with you need the other 4 wisps first, because like the environment of the game just really leads you to go in that direction, I think.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing. At the very least, it's kind enough to leave a teleporter right there, so I didn't just waste my time in the area.
Couldn't figure out bubbles casually. It took me like 2 hours to figure out how to get into the Luma pools.
That is
really
pretty valid.
Yeah. Not my
yeah.
kind of moment.
Some of those kind of things in games are like, I feel like if I was a game designer, I'd be so scared. Like, what if someone just doesn't get it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, everything in games is super obvious once you know how to do it.
I remember getting hard stuck in Hollow Knight, so I didn't know you could pogo in fungal ways.
The one that really got me in Hollow Knight was Abyss Shriek, like the room where you're supposed to do your little up spell in the room. Like, I didn't get that for the longest time. I
flat out didn't get it, I won't lie to you.
It's pretty obscure, to be fair.
Yeah.
Sorry for the Hollow Knight spoilers, everyone.
Yeah, back to Ori and the Will Wisps. Video game.
The next area we're going to is called the Moldwood Deaths. It's actually an area that we've seen the entrance to. If you recall, Roos made a dip into the area we're about to see in order to get a shard near the start of the run.
Yeah, this might look familiar to you.
This is also Roos's favorite level in the game.
That is true.
Mine
it's
too.
Very, very cool. You'll see shortly, but given what I did earlier for a donation incentive, this will feel right at home.
Yeah. This is one of the most fascinating areas for me in the speedrun. The gimmick, not that it's a bad thing, but the gimmick of Moldwood is that there's this oppressive darkness, where if you stand in the darkness for a very short window of time, you will actually be kind of squished and killed immediately. The way around that is to get near light sources, which resets that darkness cooldown. So casually, it takes quite a while. You have to follow around these very slow fireflies that provide lights. But in the speedrun, we can zip through these areas fast enough that the darkness doesn't have time to catch us, and we have ways to restore kind of our own light.
Yeah, so you saw Roos swapping to the bow there, and as I was saying before, with the Sentry bow also gets to do other things, and the bow will actually restore your light, basically. So what we're going to do is, don't want to fire the bow too much because it does slow us down, but we want to just go through these seconds as fast as possible. So here, for example, you're meant to create light to get through this part, but by using the bow, we can just dash right through.
It feels so unfair to the other abilities. That like Sentry gets to do all this stuff, Bow gets to do all this stuff. Like,
yeah, right.
They're just amazing abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Just blows my mind how fast this is. Again, for anyone who played this casually, you probably remember how long this area took you to get through, and pay attention because we're kind of getting towards the end of it already.
Yeah, this last part is probably the hardest part of Moldwood in the speedrun. Have to do some pretty precise sentry jumps, and we're done. That was all of Moldwood Deaths, an hour-long level in 60 seconds.
It's so good. Like, I
Incredible.
really love that area in the speedrun. It just really looks flashy. Very satisfying movement for sure.
So here we're coming up to a very difficult boss fight, which also happens to be my personal favorite. There's a lot of creepy spiders, and here's the big one. This boss is called Mora, and she is a fascinating boss.
Yeah, fantastically good, well designed. I can't decide between this one and the final boss, but they're both just like stellar boss designs for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Like, they're absolutely huge, and Ori's so tiny, so you have to just use your movement to get around their massive hitboxes, basically. Which is what we're going to see here, basically. And it's going to be a lot of, just shooting bow up, but also just dashing at the last moment to avoid these string attacks. After a while, Mora will break through this wall, and then we're going to dash and stay on her right-hand side, because if we're on her left-hand side, she can do an attack where she dashes over to the left, which we don't want her to do. Some of these spiderlings can be very scary. Okay, that's good. Yeah, and takes the intentional death. If you don't die there, the spiderlings will warp up to the top side, and the spiderlings actually do like a absolute ton of damage and get in the way if you just holding bow. So taking an intentional death there to despawn the spiderlings is ideal.
Yeah, Mora herself is not that scary. It's the spiderlings that are like really terrifying in this fight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
coming into the second half of the Mora fights, in the final phase, which we're not in yet, we'll soon hit the final phase where Mora actually encapsulates the whole arena in darkness, which is where it's very advantageous that we're already using the bow for damage.
Yeah. Again, Reese is trying to stay on the right-hand side of Mora so she doesn't start dashing off to the left. Okay, never mind. I don't know how it works.
We got her in time.
Yeah. I swear that's how it's supposed to work, but that was... Yeah, so this darkness phase, again, we're just spamming the bow, basically. And she's pretty much dead. Nicely done.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Probably worth mentioning, we did actually skip an ability called Flash during all of that.
Yeah, you meant to get something to like create light for you, but we skipped it. Also worth mentioning, we actually briefly swapped to Reckless in the second phase to do a bit more damage. If you remember, Reckless is the one that makes you do more damage, but also take more damage.
Yeah, so the reason we don't use it all that often during fights is because you burn through your energy so quickly. But speaking of Rich getting richer, one of the things the bow can do is on certain energy crystals, notably all of them in boss fights, you can shoot the energy crystal with the bow, and you just get like dozens of energy to drop. It's insane. Like, you get a full refill every time.
Yeah, and Reese is also now doing the most major sequence break in the whole run, actually, but we're actually just using it for the sake of saving a bit of time over watching this cutscene. This is the Feeding Grounds, which does like a cat and mouse stealth chase sequence, basically. And after you're finished with it, it makes that whole section into like an instant kill plane. But we just didn't touch the ground at all. So not touching the ground means you skip the cutscene, you hit the floor is lava, and also it means that that is no longer an instant kill plane. So in other categories, you'll see them do that and then just go straight to the end of the game. But for us, we have to finish all the main quests first, which is why we're here in Windswept Wastes.
Whoops.
Yeah, Windswept Wastes, I believe this is the first area of the game where extensive gameplay was shown in a demo.
Yeah, that's true.
That's kind of cool. This area, we mentioned earlier, this is going to be home to the fifth and final Wisp in an area called the Wind-Torn Ruins. The reason a lot of players come here first is that it is near the Silent Woods, where you have to go anyway before casually unlocking access to some of the rest. Roos, as always, going to be using these Sentry Jumps in combination with other movement abilities to get through this area very quickly. Just like that, we've reached our next skill.
This one is Burrow, which is functionally pretty similar to Swim Dash, but the difference is you can't stop while burrowing, and there's a few subtle differences for a speedrunner with the way the momentum works and stuff like that. And it also means you can burst through these like sandy sections basically, and again, that kind of stuff always gives us our dash back, our jump back, so on and so forth. So more ways to tie our movement together.
I believe we still have some leftover keystones, as has kind of been true this entire time.
Yep. We're going to be using 2 of them coming up in a little bit here. The 2 we picked up in Moldwood that were very quick. The ones here are also very quick, but they're just not as quick as the ones in Moldwood. So instead of doing this section, we're just going to Sentry Jump up here, and we're done.
This is a really
There's
fun
just-
section of the speedrun. Like the movement here is very unique because you get to use the burrow so much. It's very different from the other parts.
Yeah.
One thing that's probably worth mentioning, this game can be speedrun on either keyboard, mouse, or controller, and you're playing on keyboard, mouse, right, Roos?
Correct.
Yeah. And the thing with that is that there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So on the keyboard and mouse, you only have 8 directions you can go for burrow, which makes the controller a little bit more difficult than on controller where you have analog stick. But on keyboard and mouse, you can aim your bashes and your launches perfectly to a very precise degree of precision, which obviously is also very good. So it's ultimately completely personal preference, which you play on.
Which is nice. The Ori and the Blind Forest, the first game, definitely had like a notable advantage for keyboard, but I'm really glad that this one has kind of like brought the two pretty much at parity.
Yeah. There's top runners that play on both.
Nice damage boost through the laser. Roos going to be using these sentry jumps to gain height. Normally you would have to use that burrow burst out of the sand to gain height. This is going to bring us to the Windtorn Ruins. This is an area that kind of looks like it's going to be a big dungeon, and I guess it still is depending on your definition of a dungeon. In practice, what it ends up being is a series of cutscenes. And I don't mean that negatively, because I think they're really interesting cutscenes, but a lot of this progression through the Windtorn Ruins is going to be just kind of trying to optimize where you can and kind of watch the cutscenes that you have to.
Yeah, it's an interesting area casually, but there's not a lot to it in the speedrun, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to jump in while I have you guys right here. We have a $10 donation from Seal who says, "Good luck on the run. I'll donate another $10 if you can come up with another awful Ori-related pun."
It's a dangerous challenge to get RooseSR.
Give me a second. I'll see if I can come up with one. Hold on.
Seal is another NQO runner, so thank you very much for the donation.
I guess you could come up with a pun, or I could.
Oh no. Well, I guess we need to ask the donator if that will seal the deal.
God.
That wasn't even an Ori pun.
It wasn't Ori related, you're right. Oh, it's an Ori runner. It's kind of Ori related, right?
Yeah. I'm sure he'll count it.
There's a lot of murals on the wall.
It's 4 a.m. What am I doing with my life? Sorry. This is fun.
We're almost done with this. Have to use the sword to break open this thing. Collapses an enormous pillar. Our objective here in the Windtorn Ruins is to get that 5th and final Wisp, which will actually combine all the Wisps together into Super Wisp.
Yeah.
As I like to call it.
Yeah, its name is Sarah or something like that, but...
This is the time in the run where I always do my Gorlek arm stretches, just because we get a little bit of downtime here.
This is the point in the run where I start getting really nervous. Because I've had time to think of, oh my god, I'm on PB this.
yeah, come on, let's do the forearm Gorlek arm stretches. Come on, Special. All right. Oh, raise them up. There we go.
It's a pretty long cutscene. As we said, this whole temple so far has been pretty quiet, but that's about to change.
You can actually see the worm in the background on the left. He's just chilling there. He's just waiting.
Biding his time.
Oh, I've got a... It's kind of an Ori pun that I'll do in a second.
Okay.
Hopefully this one counts for Seal.
I'm sure the last 2 did too, but...
This is certainly one of the lengthier cutscenes. Would be nice to find a way to skip it like in a cutscene.
What are you doing there, big worm?
Did my side come through the mic? I sighed again louder.
Well, I don't get it.
Like the giant worms from Dune? Have you seen / read
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was really, really bad.
It took me...
I liked it. I thought it was a good pun.
I won't say that I liked it, but it was a good pun.
I mean, I came up with it, and I don't think I liked it, so I don't blame you.
Anyway, this actual escape, the part where we're like escaping from the giant sandworm of death. How about we talk about that? It's pretty much an all-scroll at this exact point because what the hell?
The
was
rock!
that?
The rock!
The rock!
That
Is
is
that
not the
That
first
rock
time
has
that's
clipped and
happened.
killed Roos. Yeah.
I actually lost a run to a much larger piece, pushing me up into the worm like that. It was one of my favorite clips I've ever gotten. It was so funny.
It's so weird, like, cause I've literally never seen that, and it's happened to you and others like so much. I don't understand.
So I've had the one that straight up killed me, and then I've had like little fragments show up, maybe like 3 or 4 other times as well.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the sandworm escape.
Yeah, just to give one actual piece of commentary for a second, that escape isn't too difficult, but it isn't free either. Especially on keyboard, you have to make sure that your burrows don't bonk into walls and get you killed.
Yeah. Hey, Feather. Here you're completely input locked, except for the feathers. When you walk off that ledge, you can feather for. You know,
Doesn't
if you
actually
want
save any time. It's just interesting.
to. Yeah,
I guess we would call that a swag strat.
we would in fact call this swag strat.
But yeah, so especially on keyboard, that escape definitely has the potential to kill you. You don't expect like experienced runners to die to it, but it can happen.
Yeah, and if you die, you go all the way back to the start, and you lose your PB, and you get very sad.
In the
Casually,
background,
at
we see
least-
the Willow of the Wisps.
Oh boy.
Can I like go to bed? Like, is that allowed?
We're almost there. Don't you want to talk about launch swaps?
I do want to talk about launch swaps. Oh, I'm
Okay,
so
well, we're
excited to
almost
talk about
there.
launch swaps. Yay! I don't like playing this character. I've decided I'm going to stop playing this character with the grumpy old miser who wants to go to bed. I'm having a really good time.
So Scar, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
What we're doing right now is we're going towards to get the final ability, which is the most broken one in the game. For now, we have to just basically kill some dudes on an elevator while we head up. And as always, we're going to pretty much just use the bow.
Yeah, this area is called the Weeping Ridge for what it's worth. That the elevator's in. We'll be in the Weeping Ridge, progressing through it until we actually reach the Willow that we just saw in the background.
Yeah. The thing about this elevator as well is that the elevator only stops when the second one spawns, so it doesn't actually matter how long you take to kill the first one. So we can afford to use like a few sword swings and stuff, which is why Roos was doing that a little bit before. And there as well, because the second one only spawns over now, so it doesn't actually matter too much if we get to him like a tiny bit late or whatever.
Yep, same technique as before, trying to make sure these enemies target one direction before you bash through them to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty dry on the energy drops, but we have so much at this point, it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah. Now we're heading down. We see these little mine enemies as well that are going to get in our way in Willow Tree, as well as these laser enemies that we can bash off. Keep the momentum the whole way down and pick up Launch, our final ability.
Launch
Now,
is a
Launch-
fascinating ability. I'll go ahead, Roos.
No, I would much prefer you to explain it.
Well, what Launch is it essentially lets you bash yourself anywhere. Is the simplest way to explain it. You can still only use it once in the air, which gets refreshed in certain circumstances. There's also a very fascinating trick called launch swapping, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's exclusive to 1.3, which is the patch that Roos is playing on.
Yeah, and if you're playing at 1.3, this is the main reason too, because it is so much fun. Basically, if you launch and then open the weapon wheel directly after launching and swap to something else, you will just keep all of your momentum for some reason and just go absolutely flying. And if you do a backflip, which is pretty much just holding crouch and jumping, you'll keep even more momentum, which you'll see right at the very start of a Willow Tree here, going to the left.
Naturally, it becomes very important that you aim them correctly, because if you don't, you're going to very quickly smash into something.
Yeah.
That first one is so incredible. Oh boy. Well, we get to see it 2 times.
Yay. It goes
Roos,
so
this is something
fast.
you mentioned the other day. This final dungeon, which is called Willow's End, it's the giant willow tree that we saw in the background of that cutscene a moment ago, is a really fascinating moment. I've heard Ori, both 1 and 2, described as a game that is best played when Ori can stay in the air as long as possible. And this dungeon is just the epitome of that. You can see Roos spending enormous sequences of time without ever touching the ground, through bashes, through air dashes, through launches, and by refreshing those launches over and over through a variety of means.
Yeah, so every time you touch a wall, you get launch back, and launch also refreshes your dash and your jump. So you can, dash into launch, into dash, touch a wall, launch off it again, all that kind of stuff.
I enjoyed
and
that heart so
basically-
much that I did it 3 times.
That heart is
Just,
really fun, to be fair.
Wanted to show off the tech. What we're actually doing here, by the way, is that there's a door we're trying to get through, but it's blocked by a series of these kind of orange corrupted tendrils called, are they called corrupted hearts?
Yes.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, so we have to destroy, is it 7 of them? I should know that.
There's
I'm
8.
commentating this game.
There's 8, yeah, but like 2 of them are really close together, so it feels like 7.
Let's just call it 7.5.
Yeah, sure. And here, what Reese did was pretty much just dash underneath that boulder as it came down. And there's meant to be like an Indiana Jones chase sequence away from the boulder, but we skipped it by going underneath it.
We made sure to cut it as close as possible there.
Yeah, getting hit by the boulder isn't ideal, but fortunately the boulder doesn't instantly kill you for some reason. So I think it does at the front, but not at the back or something like that. Also, something we did there is similar to a Sentry Jump. If you up slash and launch at the same time, you also get a bunch of momentum, and doing a launch up out of that gives you even more momentum. And here is a really cool skip, basically. We're going to be taking this projectile and redirecting it through these rooms like this, and that will break this wall.
Well
Nicely
done. Yeah, that's not as easy as it may have looked. Or maybe
I
it
always
was
hold
really
my
hard.
breath during that entire thing, because like any little slight miss angle on your bashes there, and it like completely messes the whole trick up.
Yeah, you're meant to do like a 20-second long puzzle of redirecting it through multiple portals, but with good movement, we can just bring that one over. And this heart over here, heart 4, is a lot of fun as well. The floor is going to be literally lava. We're not allowed to touch it at all. We're going to use burrows as well.
Really making usage of those launch swaps. As you've seen, you can use them horizontally or vertically, depending on what your needs currently are.
Yeah. Nice save there, by the way.
Yeah, I missed a bash off the little elemental guy there, and it was a little wonky, but we got back on it. This dungeon
Yeah.
is like, you have incredibly broken abilities, but this dungeon is difficult enough to demand you actually use them, which I think is very, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that, like, I have absolutely no idea what killed you.
Me neither.
Oh, it's that guy with the laser above you. He, like,
Oh,
fired
he
at you
just-
for, like, a frame.
That's unfortunate.
The
Yeah.
sneaky snipe.
Fortunately, it's a pretty friendly autosave before it.
Yeah. Here, we're going to take a
I-
white dash over here. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I guess that's something we've already seen a lot in this run. One of the major differences, even casually in this game compared to the first, is that Ori 2 frequently gives you autosaves, whereas the first one had an entirely different save system.
Mhm.
Also, just walk through that laser source, because why not?
Yeah. And this one, this heart can be the most challenging, especially if the movement doesn't quite go right. And we just have to improvise a bit with the cycles here, but manages to get through well enough anyway, so good job.
I told myself not to forget to swap back to bow as soon as I started that heart. I still forgot.
It's okay, no runner has ever remembered to swap back to bow.
Definitely not.
Oh,
Yeah, definitely non-trivial.
No,
nice
almost.
one. Almost.
That's
Yeah,
one of my
so the
favorite
lo-
swag strats right there. If you time it just right, you can weave through that little spot right there with like maximum downward velocity, and it's so cool. Doesn't actually save much
Yeah.
time, but it's very, very cool.
We have our second to last boss of the game. A very, very difficult one. Arguably more difficult than Mora or Quilla combined, probably.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, the APM right now from Moose, just unbelievable amounts of inputs.
Whoop. I accidentally fat fingered my dash.
I was like, that's an interesting strat. I haven't seen that one before.
That is not a
I-
strat.
I don't know if my joke landed. That boss is generally considered to be very easy because the bow just melts through its rock shields.
Yeah. Reese is now gonna Sentry Jump all the way back out, or rather launch jump, I guess, and then head on towards Heart 8, where runs go to die. And Heart 8 is like, it's not that it's like particularly difficult. It's just that if things go wrong, you start panicking, and because it's all cycle based, when you start panicking, the cycles get worse and worse, and it just all spirals out of control. So it can be very scary. This is Heart 7 for now. This is what I mean by it's too close together. You kind of get this one on the way to Heart 8.
Almost,
note,
almost under the dungeon.
If I just have a quick second, we have $10 from Seal. He says, looks like the deal has definitely been sealed.
Hey. Thanks, Seal.
Thank you very much. Here we're gonna do some damage tanks, basically. Just another reason Heart 8's very scary, because we're gonna do a lot of weaving around lasers and intentionally taking damage against some of them.
I'm very confused what I actually hit there.
Yeah, I don't know what killed you either.
Must have just brushed it somehow.
Yeah.
There's going to be a little bit of movement coming up here. It's not too difficult, but you have this enormous rotating circle. Roos is going to try to move in a particular way, launch, then double jump, and launch again, and almost got through.
Bad angle there.
Yeah, this game has a lot of animation cancels where you can cancel the lag of the recovery of one thing into another thing, into another thing, and so on and so forth. And you can make like chaining movement like that a lot of fun.
And that's the last Corrupted Heart, which is going to open the way to the final boss. Yep, there it goes, the full thing.
So, getting to the final boss is just totally fine. The final boss itself, we can start talking about a little bit. It's going to have 4 phases if you count the escape, and each of them is pretty determined, except the 3rd phase, which is going to be RNG. So we're going to pray for good RNG for Roos. It's normally not like, it doesn't determine that much, but it can be a big deal. Also, some launch drops to get over there. Yeah, so this is Shriek, final boss, and she's always going to do this attack first, which means that if we... because this first phase is entirely determined already, we can fight it in the exact same way every single time. And if we do things correctly, we should be able to take it down in just a few attacks. There we go, 4 cycle. That was really well done.
Thank you. All right, now for my favorite part of Shriek, we're going to see some really cool backflip launch swaps here.
Yeah, this stuff is all just nuts. Like, we're just going to be flying through this escape at breakneck speed, basically.
It's the launch swaps in combination with the feather, too. Just maintain that speed for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the whole escape's pretty much done. And that is a lot slower to do normally. And doing this means that so now whenever we get to phase 3, Shriek will always do this attack first. And we're just going to swap to overcharge so he has the right amount of energy here. And we want her to do these kinds of attacks where we can just wail on her. She can also do swoop attacks like this. And for these attacks, we can't really do very much damage for her, so we want to avoid them. This is the second swoop attack. This is one of the worst ones to get.
Oh no, she's not being kind.
Yeah, that's not very nice.
Sometimes the RNG dice don't get rolled in your favor.
Yeah, this one, she's just going to slam the ground 3 times. We can roll to the side each time and just shoot her with bow. It's also not so bad because she destroys the arena, which is going to happen later on anyway, so it actually saves a bit of time to get it.
Ooh,
that's unfortunate.
Taking 2 hits there was unfortunate.
Yeah, her like beak has a hitbox there as well.
And immediately jumps into the background. This is a very slow attack.
This is the worst one she can do right here, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I've certainly found this fight very difficult casually, especially these swoops. They can be difficult to identify without practice.
Her hitboxes are really massive. This one's a really good attack. She's going to be shooting this laser for a long time, and she's just going to hang out for a little bit and just let us hit her.
Yeah, I missed
so
a
we
lot
get a lot of
bow
damage
shots there, unfortunately.
Yeah, Roos is also...
Sorry, what?
One quick thing, maybe we mentioned this already, when you hit something with a sword, it refreshes your double jump. So that's how Roos is able to hover in the air and just chain back and forth between sword and double jump.
Also worth mentioning that launch has a tiny bit of iframes right at the very start of it, so we can actually use that to avoid some attacks by like standing pretty much directly in the way, launching up and then shooting down at them or whatever. Phase 3 very nearly done now.
No.
Wow.
Of course, she decides to be a meanie.
As
Shriek
Scar
is
said,
cranky tonight.
The first phase is consistent. This one is not. We're almost in the final phase.
All right, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so in this final phase, this death is intentional. The arena is going to disappear entirely, and the same falling little projectiles we've been seeing in the slow RNG attack, we're actually going to be using to bash and gain height. At least casually, that's the intent, is you have to stay in the air while fighting the remainder of Shriek's health bar.
Yeah, but in the speedrun, we want to ideally kill her in just one cycle, which means that we're not going to be bashing off them really much at all if we can avoid it. We want to try and just avoid bashing and just launch and feather all the way, because we know which way her swoops are coming from, so we can just drop down below here, then bash all the way here. She'll be coming up on the right-hand side, and we're going to just basically shoot the crap out of her and bash up, and then use a launch to get up the little bit of height we need, and that should be it.
Nice.
That's not time. But yeah, nicely done.
Thank you. Oh, well, Willow was a bit of a mess, but the rest of the run I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, that looked really good to me.
Well executed.
So time will be called at the end of. There's going to be some cutscenes here, roughly 3 minutes worth, and there at the very end there's just a little bit more inputs we have to do. We just have to basically have to press spacebar and then hold right for a last tiny little bit of movement. So we call time at the end of that, which I will call out to you as it comes up.
We like to meme about getting crawl gold splits because there are technically inputs like Roos mentioned, but you're doing so little that it's virtually impossible to go faster or slower.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're doing this, I want to give shout out to both my commentators. Thank you so much, especially Scar for staying up incredibly late for EU times. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. It was really fun to do.
Yeah, pleasure.
And like huge shout out to the Ori community, as we've said before. Ori 1 was my first speed game, and I've run a lot of different games in a lot of different genres since then, and like Ori community has forever stayed my home. It's like some of the absolute best people you'll ever meet. Really, really love the Ori community, and they're an amazing reason to run these amazing games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more there.
Although you should also play Ori casually, even if you're not interested in speedrunning these games.
Yeah. I mean, look at this. It's so good.
Also, if you're thinking this game looks really good, in order to get the game to run more smoothly for a speedrun, I've got the graphics turned like as low as they possibly can. This game looks much better if you're just like playing it casually. It's flat out, like jaw-droppingly gorgeous.
The first game was already gorgeous, and then in this game, they, I don't know, they pulled some black magic, and somehow they made it prettier.
Yeah, that blew my mind because I was so used to like the first game being the most gorgeous game ever made. Then you see this and it's like, oh, somehow it's better. Like, significantly so in some places. It doesn't make sense.
All right, so we're just about to come up to this last little crawl sequence. On previous patches, you actually only have to hold right here. So I used to literally, when I used to originally run this game on controller instead of keyboard, I would literally have a rubber band on my desk, and after killing Shriek, I would just rubber band the analog stick to right to like so I could like get up and walk away or something. But on patch 1.3, you actually have to press spacebar or X or whatever on your controller to get Ori to stand up. So you can't just walk away, unfortunately.
There is actually one input you can do here. If you try to open the map, it tells you the map is not available here.
I was going to be really mad if that actually opened the map and lost me time and you had just debated me.
That would be way funnier. I wish that happened. I should have said, oh no, if you press pause, nothing happens. Anyway, time's coming up.
Yeah, time will be, Ori will come up to the Wisp here and fall to her knees, and that will be time. Time is right now.
GG.
Thank you.
Yeah, great run.
All right, thank you so much to Hekathon for having me on. It was a really fun time.
Thank you.
Have any other Ori community donations while we're waiting?
Unfortunately, we are fresh out of donations, but
All right,
I would
no worries.
seriously encourage you guys to tweet out your best seal puns using the hashtag Hek21 on Twitter. I would love to be putting those on the stream right now.
And when I get a chance to go back and watch this VOD, I'm going to donate $1 per unintentional death I took, which I think is going to be a lot because